Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terusian, founder of Samson Rose, a robotics and AI-focused search firm. And on today's episode, we are joined by Seth Winterroth, partner at Eclipse Ventures. Eclipse is an early-stage venture capital firm that primarily focuses investments on the physical industries that are critical to people's lives. Thanks for being here, Seth.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad we got this on the calendar. So let's jump into it. Usually I start by passing it over to the guest for you to tell us a bit about your journey and how you got into the wonderful world that you're in right now, which is obviously venture capital and technology investing.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm from Boston, Massachusetts originally, did my undergrad at Claremont McKenna. Okay. Was fortunate to after taking a little bit of time traveling through Southeast Asia and kind of having the post-college travel bug be met, I went to work at GE. Nice. And quickly found myself in just some really awesome roles at GE young in my career, where I had exposure to a lot of the strategic initiatives across this large industrial conglomerate. This is like the 2012, 13, 14 type time frame. When this large company was trying to turn into the 21st century. GE you can kind of think of as like having a vantage point into global GDP across several of the large industries that operate in the physical world. So healthcare and aviation and aerospace and energy, oil and gas, renewables, transportation, like all these types of categories. Yeah. And there was really a big movement internally within the company to go adopt the digital capabilities that could bring operational efficiency, resiliency, in some ways change the pricing models, change the way the revenue for those businesses, those legacy businesses, was valued. And I had a front row seat to that. And it was very formidable for me early in my career, kind of this, sitting at the convergence point between these large industrial categories that really move society forward, literally and figuratively, and the need to adopt the digital capabilities that were really coming of age during that time. So technologies like industrial IoT, metal 3D printing, modern autonomy solutions, a litany of different types of technology tailwinds. And a lot of these were sitting on top of, the last few decades of technological progress that we'd seen come out of, personal computing and mobile computing and, cloud and these types of categories. So it was just a really awesome experience for me, to kind of cut to the quick. I realized pretty quickly three things. One, a lot of the solutions that were really representative of the cutting edge were coming from the startup ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Two, many of these companies at the time were having a really hard time raising venture capital. If you can recall, if you were pitching, a business model that had a hardware plus software offering that required you to navigate manufacturing risk or supply chain risk, or you were selling that offering into industries that were criticized as being too long sales cycle or challenging to penetrate, it was kind of a dead on arrival pitch for most people in Silicon Valley. And we saw that front and center from my vantage point at GE. And then the third thing I think was, just a desire to move into a more, let's say, nimble, flexible ability to be decisive and move more quickly type operational environment that really isn't representative of typical large corporates. So all that kind of coming together brought me to, what is now Eclipse. And, in late 2014, early 2015, Eclipse was launched to solve many of those problems, right? To go be an institutional firm focused on investing in those types of early stage technology startups, servicing the industries that make up the vast majority of global GDP. And that's what we've been doing for about 9 years now.
Love that. Yeah, it's a big challenge, especially in the investment world, right? When a lot of people are chasing quick wins, higher valuations, like quick exits, things like that, and the cost associated to investing in hardware, right? And the timelines is very different. So it's refreshing, being in the space, focusing on hardware, to work with VCs that have that perspective and aren't just like chasing the shiny thing of like, oh, it's autonomous vehicles today and it's crypto tomorrow and now it's AI. So let's just repurpose our investment strategy.
Yeah, I would say there that software business models have tremendous characteristics to them. Zero marginal cost to distribute, resulting high gross margins, the ability to work across small teams nimbly to iterate and push product out with relatively little risk. The ability for investors to really evaluate the metrics quite early and underwrite against those metrics. Like, these are all fantastic things.
Right.
And the first decade of this millennia, and certainly a good part of the second one, the application layer software opportunities that existed on a couple different computing platforms were fertile ground for investment. But what's been really changing during that time as well is the cost associated for small teams of multidisciplinary engineers to come together to build new and novel and robust solutions that incorporate the full stack. And so I think, in typical fashion, the investment community takes a while to catch up. There's a little bit of latency there, right? And so there was a misnomer when we started Eclipse that these types of companies, needed, orders of magnitude more capital to get to market or get to first customer engagement, because they had some of the complexities associated with navigating a full stack development pathway or development roadmap. And that just wasn't the case. In 2016, I led the seed round of Eclipse invested in, I represented us with a company called 6 River Systems, which is a robotics company.
Yep.
And that company got a production autonomy solution into the supply chain market with about $6.5 million of capital.
Wow, really?
So that's like that. It flies in the face of like the typical perception. Of these types of companies. Now, that's not always the case, and certainly some development efforts need more capital than others. But there's a number of different reasons why this is the case. But it's gotten easier and less capital intensive for small teams to build these types of solutions and bring them to market over the last 10 years.
That's amazing. Obviously the funding rounds in terms of capital are larger within hardware for that reason, because there's some associated costs in there. So, 6.5 is pretty high for a lot of like a general, if you look at the whole landscape, seed round, right? Wouldn't you say? So from an investor standpoint, or even like industry standpoint, that kind of spooks some people. And not everyone can play in that space. That's why I think it's refreshing that you guys have that perspective and know that can become commercial a lot sooner, instead of doing like a seed A, B, C, D round before you actually gain that traction and start seeing revenue.
Yeah, we don't really think about being venture capital investors really in general, or but certainly by stage. What we think about is what is the capital required for an organization to reach its next inflection points of value. And when we write the first checks into many of these companies, that's typically our MO, right? Is to be the first investors. Sometimes the capital required is on the order of a few $1 million. Sometimes it's on the order of 15 to 20. And so how do we develop conviction there? Well, it's really about sitting down and prosecuting the development roadmap with the teams and really understanding, hey, we're endeavoring to go build a world-class multidisciplinary engineering organization, engineering operations, product organizations that are going to work diligently to go deliver a full stack solution. In some cases, it's a pure software solution. Some cases, it's a full stack solution, and drive value for a customer around a certain set of use cases. And the capital required to go get to a place where you've delivered a delightful solution, right? By the customer's definition, whatever those metrics might be, you then work your way backward and say, what does that schedule look like?
Yeah.
How many people do I need? What are the resources required to get to that place where we've hit that inflection point of like, I've delivered a solution to a small number of customers, and those customers are pretty darn happy with what we've delivered. That's the work that we do early on. And so what that requires is, a prosecution of an engineering roadmap that gets us to a place where we feel confident that there's no science risk, right? It's engineering execution. Because if I'm not smart enough to predict, like when net new invention occurs, right? When this photon detector is able to, improve in performance by an order of magnitude or more, this kind of stuff. But if we look at the schedule together and we say with a combination of internal developments and off-the-shelf capabilities that are known, we can get to like plus or minus 6 months of accuracy for a development roadmap. That's usually a pretty good signal, that there's an opportunity to go build something together to go deliver delight to a customer. And so that's kind of the work we do on the early stage of diligence.
Love that. So 2 things then. One, I'd like to dive in a little bit more into that because it seems very involved, very granular. And I'm curious, is that 2 things? One, I want to know your role as a partner, what your primary responsibilities are there and your focus areas within the firm, because I know you've got a whole team. But then also 2, the work that you just mentioned there, is that for every company that Eclipse invests in? Is that only when you're leading a round? Because, there's some VCs that they just want to give a check, right? They're a little bit more hands off, or some founders prefer them to be hands off, but you guys seem very involved.
So that's not us. That's not us. We always lead. We always take a board seat. We run the firm by a couple different investment activities by 3 core principles, right? It's high conviction, high involvement, and high ownership. Nice. Right? When we're highly convicted on something, we go all in. We lead. When we take that board seat, it enables us to be involved, right? We like to invest in non-consensus opportunities, right? And our goal as an organization is to improve the odds of success of the entrepreneurs that we partner with. And so that also means we got to focus on, the things that we know, right? You don't see us, do a lot of generalist oriented investing, right? We stay in the areas that we have domain expertise, that we've got previous operations experience, that we've invested successfully in bringing these types of companies to market in these types of industries. And then ultimately on the ownership side, we're very conviction oriented. We make a handful of investments per year. It's a very old school venture model, right? Where we invest, we don't spray and pray, we go all in, we work from the earliest days to partner with entrepreneurs. And because we have that high ownership, that high involvement, and that high conviction, we can bring, all of the value of the firm behind a handful of investment opportunities.
Nice. And your role specifically as a partner, where do you come into these conversations?
It's not a hierarchical operation at Eclipse. Everybody's doing the work, and the work is, finding opportunities, prosecuting those opportunities with, deep diligence activities, structuring and making investments into those opportunities. Oftentimes it's competitive.
Yep.
Joining the boards and building, right? There are really no shortcuts. It takes 10 years, right, for a company to go from a twinkle of an idea to, having the substantive foundation to maybe pursue their opportunity. Like, it's just there's one thing I've learned in this business is it takes a little bit longer than everyone thinks. And along the way are like 1,000 different decisions, that if you don't make the right ones, some number of them can be complete derailers for the activities of the organization. And so, working in the trenches day in and day out with the entrepreneurs that we partner with to help make sure that the majority of the decisions that are consequential to the business that are made are made in the right way.
Right.
And everybody at the firm, operates kind of with those sets of responsibilities.
Love that. Yeah, I'm obviously quite familiar with Eclipse and how involved you are. So some of the questions I want to ask is for the listeners to understand, because Eclipse, if people aren't aware, are very respected in the space. Anytime you mention Eclipse, people know them, especially in the hardware space. They're aware of them. The companies that they've backed are doing really great things. And the way that you work with founders, from my feedback, has been very respected as well. People appreciate their involvement, the ex-operators being on staff as well, knowing their verticals and being able to add value there, working directly with the founders is very beneficial, especially for first-time founders. I've found from talking in the market, that you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes you just need the help, you need the introductions, you need the support when you're a skeleton team. So it really helps.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we touched a little bit on the investment thesis and the kind of areas and industries that you focus on, right? Physical industries, critical to people's lives. Can you highlight some of the key industries or sectors that you're currently interested in or recently invested in?
Yeah. Kind of zooming out a little bit, we look at the global economy, call it roughly $100 trillion. Mm-hmm. And when we slice and dice it, we think about roughly 80% of that being businesses that operate in the physical world, the industries that touch, the convergence of bits and atoms increasingly. And so that's kind of what we view as our addressable opportunity. We think that there are legacy industries across healthcare and supply chain and materials and automotive, aerospace, traditional manufacturing, that are in dire need of adoption of the technology-enabled solutions that drive greater productivity, greater resilience, change their business models in some way, shape, or form. If you look at most of the most valuable companies in the world, whether it's Apple or ExxonMobil or Tesla, Microsoft, these are full stack businesses.
Right.
And we think there's an unbelievable opportunity to move society forward, to increase global productivity, and to enhance global GDP by bringing more of these technology-oriented solutions to bear in these legacy industries. So that's our focus. If you look at our portfolio, it's everything from energy infrastructure to new transportation methodologies, novel healthcare infrastructure, aerospace and defense, all different types of companies. And so what we're mainly doing is trying to meet as early as possible small teams with a vision for how these legacy industries are going to be shifted on their axes by the combination of market inflections and technology inflections and a wave of tailwinds that may not have reached their full fervor quite yet, but the entrepreneurs have a vision for how that's going to come to fruition over the next 10 years. So that's really what we focus on.
That's awesome. Selfishly, because I focus primarily on robotics and AI industries, and I know you're not focused on software solely, right? If a company is just working on software, it's not really of interest, but that intersection of hardware and software probably is more so.
I would say, my passion, like you, is in robotics and embodied intelligence. It's where I've spent a large part of my career, going back to my GE days. It's where I'm really focused right now. But when I take a look at the firm, it's not a mandate around what type of technology or how it's wrapped. It's really problems in the industry. Okay. So if there's a problem of a significant magnitude in the industries that we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on, we know the customers, and you could solve that problem with a pure software solution, by all means, right? Why make it? That's
good to know.
That's fully within the scope. That said, we also understand that many times the distribution methodology for that software that you develop is a embodiment, right? Is a hardware layer, and to do that requires you to navigate embedded software, mechanical design, electrical design, all the stages of manufacturing from EVT through mass production, procurement through complex supply chain, like all these types of activities as well. And we like that stuff. We think there's a pathway to go do that for startups to do that with efficacy and efficiency. And, we like to think we got a little bit of a experience set behind us that we can bring to bear to help companies do that right the first time. So that's that's how I would frame it.
Understood. Okay, well, with the lens of robotics and AI and the trends that we're seeing there, what's most promising for you or exciting from an investment opportunity associated to your thesis if you're looking back at those technologies?
Well, whenever we do thesis development, we always start with the market, right? Mm-hmm. I love to go deep on the technology, but really, it's the markets that drive everything. It's what's happening in those markets. What are the problems? What's the purchasing intent? How much value it can be captured by adopting new solutions, both for developing and adopting new solutions. So we really try to spend a lot of time there. Fortunately, across almost every physical world industry today, there are massive challenges associated with labor availability, with reskilling labor. There's huge tailwinds around reindustrialization back onshore. And there's an increasing awareness within the market, within the customers, that the adoption of modern automation systems can be an unbelievable driver of accessing more revenue and servicing that revenue, delivering to those customers with better operating margins than you previously had, or than your business experience historically. And so all that kind of like whirlwind of activity on the market side is driving a tremendous opportunity right now for businesses that are developing modern automation solutions. When you couple that dynamic activity on the market side with converging capabilities on the technology side and the maturation of many of the elements of either component technology or different tools that are available, open source libraries. Like there's just and we can go prosecute that if you want to, but there's just an absolute frenzy of activity on the technology development side. And so those two forces are coming together and creating this perfect storm for founders and for operators that want to build in this domain. And it really is an exciting time.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. I'm so glad to be and grateful to be in the industry at this time, because you're going to see so many cool technologies coming out, so many new use cases, and it actually coming, not just being science fiction and being like this moonshot, but actually coming to life and people adopting and using, and you're seeing it in day-to-day
and the opportunity to build great businesses.
Yeah.
Right? I think a misnomer about this category is that it's a low gross margin, slow growing business model. But in reality, these full stack systems oriented, products that I would characterize robotics as being in that category, have tremendous opportunity to drive value and therefore capture significant value within large, customers that have tremendous expansion opportunities as well, right? So when you think about, you compare it to traditional, enterprise software, you're landing with some of these modern automation solutions with 7-figure deployments to start, right? That's your starting landed pricing. And then your expansion within those customers can be 20x, 50x, 100x, just based on the size and scale of their own operations. And within that category you may be serving, there can be 50, 100 different customers. So, I look around at the addressable opportunities across many of these applied robotic application domains, and you're kind of like, your eyes go wide when you realize how big the addressable opportunity is.
It's huge.
It's and then the stickiness and the defensibility and the competitive moats that you can build when you execute effectively. There's an opportunity to build some really great business models.
So true. For founders, I mean, obviously, Eclipse, you work with first-time founders, you work with seasoned leaders that are now looking to be first founder or serial entrepreneurs, right? But for founders looking to secure funding from Eclipse and, or get introduced to you, what kind of qualities and attributes do you look for in startup teams and their leadership?
Yeah, I don't think there's a single recipe or framework. I think every time I'm I get a little, think I know what a great founder looks like. I'm surprised and delighted by a new representation of that. Right. But I think if you keep it at a high level, I like to work with people that have a demonstrated ability to both build and sell. Right. And I think, on the building side, it's an ability to focus, an ability to zero in on the things that matter, how to measure them, a sense of urgency, a dogged pursuit, right? Like in the early days, you got to be comfortable being told no 100 different times, and you need to course correct and be nimble and listen to feedback and incorporate it, but also maintain strong opinions about what you think the right thing to build is. Like that whole dynamic is super important to see evidence for. And then on the sell side, when you start a company, all you're doing from the beginning is selling, right? Yeah. You're selling your spouse, you're selling your family, you're selling to these people. Yeah. You're selling to new employees, to new investors. You're trying to convince enough people early on that this like fledgling nascent idea that you have about how the world is going to look materially different in 10 years because of, whatever the thesis is, they're trying to get people to believe in that with you. Right. And so, I like people that have a demonstrated track. I like to work with people that have a demonstrated ability to sell. Now that can look a lot of different ways, right? There's a lot of different ways to go, build conviction in others and get them to believe in what you're doing. But the proof is really in the pudding.
Yeah, it's true. But I think it's something when you find purely technical founders that have been very in the weeds on a particular problem set, or sometimes over-engineer a problem and think that the world's going to benefit from it. It's hard to translate that to the general public, to investors, to things like that. So it's kind of that sweet spot. What you're saying is building and executing, but also selling, because some people might think, hey, that's a bit of a unicorn. But if you are doing what you're saying, able to build a team effectively and sell your vision and sell your view and sell the product, or even your presentation, sometimes you don't have anything physical. That's a key data point, I think, to rally people.
One thing that's different about building in these types of domains versus maybe, consumer mobile software or enterprise SaaS is the amount of work that is needed on the front end of the thesis development in order to build conviction that you should go set out on this pathway. You can't just like kind of ship software into the oil and gas industry and like iterate from there, right? You gotta, yeah. And so, really prosecuting, what is the differentiation behind the product, and how differentiate, what does it drive? Is this a, incremental improvement in the way the customer can operate as a result of adopting your solution? Or is this like a sea change, right? It really needs to be a sea change in order to get over the cold start problem, in order to give your counterpart inside the customer's organization the firepower needed to go break through the inertia that most companies have. It's got to be that big. It's got to really be, but you also as a founder want to come to that place yourself, right? Because when you build a thesis from first principles that gets you to a place of conviction that it is that differentiated, that it is, the time is now, that there is a opportunity to build something you couldn't build 10 years ago. And when you are successful, it's a game changer for the customer. And there's a lot of those customers and a high willingness to pay. Then you have a substantive position from which to go engage with the ecosystem, right? And every time you are told no, and every time there's some doubt, and there will be lots of that, you can fall back on that. You can fall back on, no, there's something here, and it's not just an incremental thing. It's a high magnitude, tremendous opportunity. And so I think it's really important to do that work early, and really not be scared to be patient with that work, and not hire and maybe not write any code until you're like, no, I really think that there's something consequential to go build here.
That's great. That's great. What common mistakes do you see early stage founders making when they're pitching to VCs, and how can they avoid those?
Um, Maybe less on like the pitching side, but you know, I'm really passionate about how do we get more companies, let's say in the robotics domain, over the chasm of from prototype and R&D and engineering work to like production deployments. And I think good founders going after a big market can typically raise that seed Series A capital, but the rubber really hits the road for these types of companies at what's called Series A, Series B, right? When you have to have some material progress to be able to go unlock that, $20 million, $40 million, $50 million capitalization event that's necessary to go inject some scale or some serious resources behind the activities of the business. And so one of the things I often see founders make a mistake on is they don't set the stage for their business early on by aligning with the right design partners on the customer side. And they make too many commitments to too many customers, or they don't really prosecute whether or not there's a customer design partner that has conviction in this approach on the other side. And so when things get challenging, as they always do when you're trying to ship and deploy these types of products, they have a hard time getting through or crossing that chasm, right? Either the development design partner they have, maybe they waffle and get cold feet and don't give them the resources they need, or maybe you committed to too many customers and you're constantly firefighting and you can't get to the root cause of some issues that are befuddling the system. And so really making sure that you've got the right use case with the right customer behind it that has conviction and is well-resourced to go the distance with you, I think is something that's really important to get right. Yeah,
that's valuable. Very valuable. Any success stories that you can share from, and obviously you take board seats and work with a lot of these startups, any success stories there of companies or lessons that aspiring entrepreneurs can take from those?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some good outcomes. I love the Six River story. It was a great team, had a real unique insight on the market, moved with urgency to build the right, capabilities inside the organization, navigated the challenging, arduous pathway of, prototype to first pilot customers. And robotics development, I would say like systems engineering development is very iterative, right? You never get it right the first time. And so, you land inside a customer and then you work with urgency to root cause the challenges, that are preventing you from hitting the performance metrics, or, the mean time between failure metrics, or some, making sure that you've got the right safety certification there, and like these types of things in a real production environment. You got to work through the long tail, the edge cases, in order to get to a place where you've got a stable, reliable performance solution that delights the customer. Yeah. And so that, Six Rivers did a very good job of kind of iterating through that stage of the journey, and then pressing the scale button, right? Of like hiring the right people, building out the management team, and being able to really go aggressively build the business. They did a good job. But there's lots of companies in our portfolio that have run that journey to success and are building, businesses with, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of annual revenue right now, with the margin profile that you'd like to see, and pathways to profitability that are, right there on the horizon.
Glad you touched on the talent part. Obviously, from the recruiting space, I've seen it in the past, and I'm curious how involved you guys are. That the missteps in hiring early on, or founders that aren't self-aware enough to know that, hey, we have a bottleneck and it's talent or manpower, or it's me, I can't do everything. Now I need to relinquish control, things like that. How involved is Eclipse, and how much weight is on that talent side of it for the success of these early stage companies?
People make these companies successful or not, right? At the end of the day, it's a people challenge, and
right.
You need different types of people and different experience sets at different stages of the business. That's no secret, right? It's the timing, and it's the knowing when to make changes, to hire certain experience, certain functions. And doing so, there's always latency, right?
Yeah.
The moment if all of a sudden you realize I need a VP of HR, or I need a VP of customer success, or I need to build out a program management function. If all of a sudden you've got the need, then you're too late.
Too
so
late.
You
Yeah.
anticipate these things well in advance of the need, based on performance of the business in the day to day, and the bet that we will be successful in our execution, right? And so that's a big, a mentor of mine in this business, always is quick to remind that, it's the founder's company, it's the CEO's company, right? So,
right.
And our role is to nudge and help the founders. My role as board member is to nudge and to help the founders lift their gaze from the myopia of the day-to-day to the traps that exist for them 12 months out, and push them when needed to make decisive calls about changes in people, changes in product, changes in customer engagement, in order to make sure that when those traps get to their doorstep, they're in position to go navigate them effectively. And so people is a big part of that. And
yeah.
Making the right decision around key hires there's no shortcut there, right? There's a process that needs to be rigorous for how you align job scope and responsibilities to the right human being on the other side, and then go bring them to the business. But when it happens effectively, it's just a force multiplier for founders, right? The first time you look around and you say, I've got a pretty robust and capable management team, it's a point of, it creates crazy leverage for the founders and CEOs of these businesses.
Yeah.
And so doing that well is critical.
So I'm glad you said all of this, because sometimes it coming from someone in the recruiting space can fall on deaf ears, because you could be selling the service, but the need is there, right? The need is there. It's so important and critical to the success of the company, having the right people.
I have seen, too many good companies get set back by 12 months because they got the product right, they got the engineering right there, ready to scale, and they didn't have a team on the other side of that moment that was ready to scale it. Yeah. And so they make customer commitments, they sell, they book business, and then they struggle to deliver against those bookings effectively, and they burn customer relationships.
Yeah.
So
I've seen it recently.
It's a hugely important thing to be aware of and to focus on getting right. It's kind of like that Series A, Series B type stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fine dance to do, because, again, I've seen it recently where you're in a new region, getting a ton of incoming business you just can't fulfill. And like you said, you burn those relationships, and people aren't going to come back to you, like, hey, I'm ready now. That's right. So timing. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to get get your take really on the current state of the industries, whether it's robotics, AI, physical industries, and any challenges or opportunities that you think are worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the market dynamics are tremendous. There's tremendous opportunity. You don't snap your fingers and all of a sudden like technology accelerates overnight, right? And so what we're seeing is all of a sudden the convergence of a lot of progressing technology capabilities that are now coming to bear on this industry. So, sensor performance to, cost of off the shelf sensing capabilities. Just go look at these charts over the last 20 years. It's just tremendous. Same thing for compute. The emergence of developer tools specifically for applied autonomy developers, companies like Foxglove that I happen to be invested in and on the board of, just making it easier, right? So that when I start a company that tries to go make forklifts autonomous, or, trains, or like whatever it is, I don't also have to build all the tool chain, all the scaffolding along the way for data management and visualization and sensor calibration and all this kind of stuff, release infrastructure. Right. So I think that's really interesting that's coming of age. The rapid progression of machine learning and these large foundation models and applying them to embodied systems. So the learned approach to developing autonomy is one of the most exciting developments out there right now. So there's all these just really interesting technology characteristics that are what are they doing? They're enabling smaller and smaller teams with orders of magnitude less capital to build more capable, comprehensive solutions that are capable of addressing application spaces that have increasing complexity. And so it all maps to, can we delight the customer? And increasingly, you're able to engender delightful solutions in more arduous, more complex, less constrained, higher value application areas. So that's fantastic. Then the last thing I would say is, when I started getting into the robotics category 12, 13 years ago, this was kind of like the philosophy degree of the engineering sciences, right? It was like great in theory, not really much practical application. And boy, has that flipped on its head. And so engineers from tangential categories, whether it be networking infrastructure or semiconductor manufacturing or traditional enterprise software, are saying, hey, there's fertile ground here to go build really valuable businesses. And there's examples, right? You've seen Tesla and SpaceX and Anduril and Palantir and some of these great companies that have built complex, multidiscipline engineering required solutions to service customers in complex physical world, perceived as long sales cycle industries, and they've done so with great success. And so what we're seeing today is kind of like the second and third and fourth generation talent from those companies saying, hey, I would rather build a company that's tackling $80 trillion of opportunity than build yet another enterprise SaaS product, right? Or another payments company for some segment of small and medium-sized businesses. And so the flood of talent into these categories has just been really tremendous to see over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Love that. Thank you. This has been awesome. I know we're at time, so I just wanted to say thank you again. And I hope everyone listens to this. Where can they find out more about you and Eclipse and follow progress?
Yeah, we are in the business of partnering with early stage and growth stage entrepreneurs. So you could find us at eclipse.vc. You can find me on Twitter at Seth Winteroth. Feel free to shoot me a note on LinkedIn, on email, whatever it is. The best part about my job is getting to meet with people who have a secret, people who have a vision for how the world's going to look different in these types of large industrial categories, and trying to work with them to figure out how we go improve the odds of success.
Amazing. Yeah, and everyone should read the blogs on the website as well, because when you guys are looking at new areas of interest, the team put out some really cool blogs, which is great.
We really tried to build in public and publish kind of how we're thinking about the world, and hopefully it inspires other people that see things similarly to how we do, to come reach out and find some ways to work together.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time.